We are going to start discussing some of the halachot of Seder night of Pesach. And one important question that comes up a lot is the minimum amount of matzah that I have to consume on Leil Seder. Obviously, many people love eating matzah, and they'll be sitting there and eating the maximum amount. But it's important to know, for those who it's hard for them to eat a lot of matzah, it's dry, and so on, what's the minimum amount? Now, obviously, the mitzvah of achilat matzah on night of Seder is a mitzvah deoraita. Ba'erev tochlu matzot. And the minimum of achilah is kazayit. The shiurin chatzitzin u'mechitzin ha'acham Moshe Sinai. The shiur kazayit is the minimum. Now, a person that has the ka'ara in front of them and says the bracha v'amotzi, the two matzot that they're holding, the broken matzah after yachatz and the top matzah which is shalem, they ought to have a kazayit from each one of them. So at least the person who runs the seder is going to be having two kazayits. Lechatchila, other people also should have two kazayits. In past generations, the three matzot of seder were large and thick, so we'll get a kazayit to each one of the members. So lechatchila, other people should also have kazayit, two kazayits, but at least a kazayit, they should have other people around the table. Now, what is this shiur of kazayit? There's machloket rishonim, whether kazayit is a third of a shiur of bitzah, or is it maybe half of the shiur of bitzah? It's machloket aposkim. Maran Shulchan Aruch paskins in L'chot Pesach that kazayit is half of the shiur of kabitza, half an egg. In Chod Matzah, you have to have half an egg. Now, that kazayit, if you imagine that kabitza is 54 grams, so then kazayit would be 27 grams. And indeed, that's what Chacham Ovadia writes, a person should consume at least 27 grams. His son, Rabbi Yosef Shalita, said that Ovadia used to measure it actually on Pesach night, measuring for mitzvah and Yom Tov is mutar. Ovadia actually has a tshuva in Yechavedat Chedek Aleph, I think it's Tzayin on this. And he would have at least a 27 gram matzah for kazayit, and 54 would be for kabetza. His son, Rabbi Yosef Shalita, writes the same. Rabbi David Yosef Shalita, he also writes this in his newly published Haggadah Shel Pesach, that he writes 28 plus grams. And this measuring with weight is not new to them. This is something that has been discussed for many generations before. Maran Chida writes this already hundreds of years ago. And this is codified la'alachai in Kaf HaChaim, in Siman Kuf Samechet, and also in Taf Pevav, in Chod Pesach, that a person should have measure it with weight, 27 grams of matzah, 27, 28, depending on how you weigh the coin dirham that they used to have in the time of the Rishonim. And this is, again, mentioned by many of the other poskim as well. The Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu was very specific about this. They should be with weight, at least 27, 28 grams. And again, more names in the mainstream poskim of the generations past. On the other hand, there are many who measure this based on volume more so than weight. Now, even Rabbi David Yosef and Chacham Ovadia simply understood, would hold that volume is the main thing, but here, for reasons beyond the scope of this talk, they rather go with weight than measuring it with volume. But Rabbi Zion Abba Shaul, for instance, Rabbi Moshe Levi, in his Tshuvot, they go more with volume than weight. And Rabbi Zion comes out that 20 grams of matzah, eating 20 grams is sufficient. That is considered eating a kazayit plus, and therefore you're good to go. That again would be Rabbi Zion, Moshe Levi, Rabbi Meir Mazuz. That should have Refuah Shelema Be'ezrat Hashem. He holds the same way, maybe even a little bit more lenient. And that would be the way to measure kazayit. Now, what's the halacha? Of course, the majority of the Poskei Sfaradim seem to hold like Chacham Obadia, and the Ben Ish Chai holds the same way, by the way. Ben Ish Chai, Kaf HaChaim, Maran Chida, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, Har Ovadia, his sons. So therefore, lechatchila, a person should have a minimum of 27 grams, which is one machine matzah is 28 grams, that's 29 grams. That's the depending on what company again you have, somewhere between 28 and 30 grams usually. So one is going to be considered a kazait. And in the hand shmur matzahs, it depends really on the company. Usually you have in a 1 pound box of matzah, you have somewhere between 6 and 8 matzot. So the thinner ones, you get 8 matzot, and that would be 56 plus grams. Again, you get 454 grams almost is a pound. Divided by 8, that would be 56 plus grams. So that would be, again, a little bit more than a kabetzah, and half of that would be a kazait. That's the lechatchila way of doing it. If a person has a hard time eating matzah, then you could rely on Rabbi Sion Abba Shaul and again Reb Moshe Levi and others, Reb Mazuz, to go with volume, and 20 grams would be sufficient. 20 grams would be sufficient. That's 2/3 of a machine matzah, and again that would be almost 1/3 of maybe a little bit more of a hand shmura matzah, thin ones. That's based on volume. Now, again, there are those who measure the volume a little bit differently, and they come out that the volume of a machine matzah would be the same as a thin hand shmura matzah. Again, we're not getting into the details of how to measure the volume, but this is how, based on what it's written in Or Etzion, of having 20 grams, we'll go simplify it with that for the purposes of this little talk. And then we have a third level. A third level is for a sick person, a person that can't have more. So obviously, according to Maran, you have to have half of kabitza. But if someone is ill, can't eat more, is really extenuating circumstances, so there they could rely on kazait being 1/3, not half, but 1/3 of a bitzah, which obviously would make it much easier. But in that case, right, Chacham Obadia, if you're having 1/3 of kabitza, which would mean 18 grams, basically, and according to Nefach would come out to a much smaller shiur as well, then Chacham Obadia says you don't make the bracha of al achilat matzah, because safek brachot la'aker, safek if you're yotze. According to Maran, you're not yotze. It's again, the mitzvah deoraita is an important mitzvah of night of Pesach. But what can you do if you can't eat more? Then you will rely on that amount, which will be again 1/3. So it's not only if it's difficult for you to eat. Seen people who say that if it's difficult for you to eat, then you could rely on 1/3 of kabitza, which would again be, according to Chacham Obadia, a third of a hand thin matzah, or would be again 2/3 of a machine matzah. But that would be only for a person that cannot have more, and they would skip the bracha. Now, the kazait that you have to eat on the night of Pesach would be should be eaten within achilat toch k'de achilat pras. Achilat pras is somewhere between 4 and 7 minutes. Again, the faster you do, the better it is. At least the first kazait. Sometimes people find it hard because it is it's dry and you're not eating it with other salads. You have to eat it alone. If it's hard, you could have a little sip of water. But again, 3.5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, depending on who you follow, somewhere between 4 to 7.5 minutes would be the kedei achilat pras, which a person should make sure to have it, and that's for the mitzvah of achilat matzah. In the beginning, for again the mitzvah of korech and afikomen, a person could be a little bit more lenient based on their capacity of how much matzah they could ingest, and they should speak with their Moreh Hora'ah on the details of that. Have a wonderful day.